With the Gold Cup starting next week, I wanted to take this opportunity to break down the roster for the United States in this upcoming tournament. I'm going to be looking at what domestic leagues are represented by this United States national team and just kind of get a sense of where these players come from and the level of talent in those leagues that these players come from, so we can sort of judge to see the level of talent and the level of league that this United States team will best represent. So to start off with, I have two categories, MLS and Europe, because all the players on this 23-man roster play in either Major League Soccer or abroad in Europe. And interestingly enough, I found that 2/3 of the players on the United States national team play their soccer domestically in Major League Soccer, and 7 players, or roughly 1/3, play abroad in Europe. So first off, I'm going to look at the players who play in MLS, because I want to divide this into the players of these 16 who are designated players or just regular non-designated players, because the salary cap doesn't affect designated players. Each team's allowed 3 of them, and designated players are typically of a higher caliber than regular MLS players whose salaries are made to conform to the salary cap. And it turns out that on the United States national team roster, 4 of the MLS players on the team are designated players, and 12 of them are regular, not designated players in MLS. Now, these 4 designated players are Michael Bradley, Jozy Altidore, Gyasi Zardes, and Paul Arriola. Now, you'll notice that the majority of those 4 players that I just listed, 3 of the 4 of them, are strikers, and it turns out that 3 of the 6 strikers on the United States national team for this Gold Cup are actually designated players in MLS. So while they do play in MLS, they are of the upper echelon of MLS talent, and I think this also shows the real state of MLS right now, where teams are more likely to make designated players be strikers, as strikers can be relied on more consistently to put the ball in the back of the net, which is, of course, very important to winning soccer games, and to overpay to get someone who can regularly put the ball in the back of the net is a very good strategy for winning soccer games. And I think the breakdown that 3 of the 5 MLS strikers on this team are designated players just shows where MLS is going, and it shows that high caliber American strikers are more likely to stay in MLS than higher caliber midfielders or defenders, because teams are more likely to sign designated players that are strikers, so they're going to be able to make their money in MLS without having to go abroad. Of the 12 non-designated players on this roster, there are all 3 goalies: Zach Steffen, Sean Johnson, and Tyler Miller. Zach Steffen is an interesting one though, as he is about to be sent out to Manchester City in July, but for right now he's still an MLS player. There are also defenders: Nick Lima, Omar Gonzalez, Walker Zimmerman, Daniel Lovitz, and Aaron Lawn. Omar Gonzalez, of course, recently was playing with Atlas in Liga MX, but he just transferred to Toronto FC. Then there are midfielders Will Trapp and Christian Roldan, and strikers Jordan Morris and Jonathan Lewis. Moving on to the European side of things, there are 3 countries whose leagues are represented by the American national team. There are 4 players who currently play in England, 2 who currently play in Germany, being Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie, and 1 who currently plays in Portugal, being Tyler Boyd, who plays for Vitória in the Portuguese top division. In England, there are 2 tiers of their football pyramid represented. There is the English Premier League, who has 1 player in it, Christian Pulisic, who plays for Chelsea. Now, he did spend the end of last season on loan to his former club Borussia Dortmund in the German Bundesliga, so he technically has not yet played a game for Chelsea in the English Premier League, although he's been a member of them technically since January of last year. And with the last season coming to an end and his loan period ended, technically he is now fully Chelsea property, so I'm going to say that he is a English Premier League player. Now, there are 3 players who are in the Championship, those being Tim Ream, who plays for Fulham, Dwayne Holmes, who plays for Derby, and Matt Miazga. Matt Miazga, of course, is an interesting case because, well, technically he is a Chelsea player, which would put him in the Premier League. He's only played 2 games for Chelsea in his entire career with them, and he spent last season with Reading in the Championship. And honestly, I'm a Chelsea fan. I don't see him playing for Chelsea next season, so I feel like another loan to the Championship is more likely, and I feel like he just hasn't played at a high enough level for us to call him an English Premier League player. So there's the breakdown for the United States national team for this Gold Cup. One thing that really surprised me about this roster is the tendency for American players to stay at home and stay playing in the United States because, well, they are playing in the best league in their country. You feel like a lot of these MLS players could probably play for lower level teams in the Premier League or Serie A or the Bundesliga and probably make quite a bit of money playing in Europe. But they've all chosen to stay in MLS, especially the designated players who probably also could be playing in Europe. I know when Michael Bradley came back, it was a huge shock that he was coming back that early into his career. Of course, he's older now. But it is quite surprising, in my opinion, that 2/3 of this American national team play domestically in MLS. And it shows that the United States team right now kind of lives and dies with how good MLS is compared to European leagues or other leagues abroad. This also leaves a nice little storyline with the fact that the Mexican team is made up almost entirely of players from Liga MX. So if this tournament does again become a two-horse race like it has in the past, it's really a measuring stick of MLS versus Liga MX to see which is the better league for developing homegrown talent. And in the past, the MLS has taken some schlock for that, and it's probably part of the reason why the United States hasn't performed as well on the international stage as people have hoped for. But things are starting to look brighter with young players like Christian Pulisic starting off their development early in the United States and then moving on to brighter pastures in Europe playing for now Chelsea. So you gotta hope that the player development in the United States is getting better, especially with the sheer number of leagues that are being created in the United States and the whole USL pyramid that's been created and multiple levels of leagues all under each other. You feel like there's now a real clear development path for young players in the United States, and hopefully that makes their national team better and a bigger contender on an international scale. But yeah, my prediction for the US in this tournament, I mean, watch my predictions video, I think they're gonna win it. Christian Pulisic is by far and away probably the best player at this Gold Cup. The United States is always a favorite to win this tournament. Them and Mexico pretty much just trade titles. It's gonna be one or the other. So let's just see how this team rolls out. So that's it for this video. If you like this, leave a like. If you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.